What is up, and welcome back to another episode of In the Corner. I'm Cash. Today we have episode 128. It's February 6th. Another good weekend of fights ahead of us. Tonight we have the boxing event in Mexico with Medina versus Curiel. And then we've also got Ball Figueroa tomorrow, PFL, UFC, BKFC, KnuckleMania. We're going to talk about all that. But first, I want to start with the Dana White comments. Obviously, he testified earlier this week in court. I believe he was on the UFC class action lawsuit against them for antitrust or something like that. I don't really understand it fully, but anyways, he testified and said that he essentially does nothing for the UFC anymore. That doesn't mean the way, I think that's what the quote was, but what he means is he's not the one who's negotiating deals with fighters. He's not matchmaking. He's not signing guys. That's just not what he does anymore, and he hasn't done that for years. In fact, he said ever since they brought Hunter Campbell on, who I believe has been there for the better part of a decade, that he's been the one who handles all that. And we know that. We know all the fighters talk about dealing with Hunter. We knew that he was the one who did that aspect of it. But it really just makes you – so I'm not surprised at this because we kind of knew that. And if you've looked at Dana recently, he's been very kind of disinterested and doesn't seem like he actually knows what's going on with a lot of the fighters or really cares much. He'll just say afterwards, like, oh, man, it's going to be a good fight. But, you ask him any question, he's like, oh, yeah, sure, we can make that a number one contender fight. Yeah, sure, he'll fight for the title. You don't like it, don't watch it. He doesn't really actually have anything to say regarding the fights and the matchups themselves, besides when he actually watches the fight, and he'll say afterwards, oh, that was a great fight. But, it doesn't really surprise me, but it's definitely kind of disappointing and makes you question, dang, how much longer does Dana have in the UFC? I think that he'll always kind of be there in some capacity, but it's just weird that he used to be, the promoter, and he still is, but he's no longer this – doesn't feel like he's, an actual fan of the sport anymore. Now it's just, a job to him, and that's kind of rubbed off on a lot of the product, I feel. But in terms, it's the same thing with Zuffa. I remember after the first Zuffa event, they asked him who do you think was had the best performance tonight? He had no answer because he didn't actually know any of the guys fighting. He didn't know any of their names. So it's he doesn't really care about the fights. The UFC has grown to be such a big operation, and he has all these other businesses happening that he can't be the one who's signing every fighter and making the matchmaking on the prelims. He's now more focused on the Paramount deal. That was him. That was probably him who did that. All their sponsorships, the events. Planning the White House. He does the big picture stuff. But it's just kind of interesting that when you watch these upcoming fights, you watch Sean Strickland, Fluffy Hernandez this weekend. He probably had nothing to do with the making that fight and didn't really, that's not his job. He's like, oh, Sean, we're gonna have Sean fight Fluffy. Okay, cool. I'll announce it. I'll read it off the paper. Sign of the times. But with that being out of the way, we're also going to talk about some other stuff with Shakur. Crazy. But let's talk about the fights this weekend. And, excuse me, let's actually start with UFC and PFL. Two MMA cards this weekend, one of PFL's better events ever. So we're actually going to start there. It is headlined by Usman Nurmagomedov back in Dubai. He's defending the lightweight title for the second time, I think, after he fought. I don't know, what was the Bellator? When did it become PFL? Anyways, he's the champion. He's defending it against Alfie Davis, who, of course, had a huge upset win over Gadzi Rabadanov last year in the tournament. So it makes, perfect sense that Alfie Davis would be next in line for the title shot. And look, maybe he can do, replicate some of that craziness that he had in that fight where he just kind of – I don't know. It was weird because I thought he was going to get manhandled by Gadzi, and then I still thought it was a little bit of a competitive fight, but he fought very technically and looked really good. Maybe he can try some of that same stuff on Usman, but I see Usman as just a much better Gadzi Rabadanov. Usman is world level. This guy could go to the UFC and fight for a title now. I see him kind of walking through Alfie Davis. I don't know if he finishes him. It's possible. Usman's not really a huge finisher. At least not recently. So my pick is Usman by unanimous decision. I don't know if he even loses a round here, but I like to see that he's staying active. He just fought 4 months ago, and he was already back in. Co-main event, Ramazan Kurmagomedov versus Shamil Musayev. Both undefeated Russians. fighting for the welterweight title, the vacant belt. This should be going. Neither of these guys have fought since 2024. Don't love to see that. Shimon Musayev more recently. I don't really have a pick, for who's going to win this one. I think it's just going to be kind of a banger. I kind of want to pick Ramazan, but also Shamil is he had a fight more recently, like just by a few months, but I'll probably side with Ramazan, but that one should be good. And then for below that, the rest of the undercard is pretty solid. Lazy King is back. He's going to be fighting Kentley St. Louis, who is a late notice replacement. A solid fighter, but Lazy King should get that one. I think Jesus Pinedo is back fighting the undefeated Salamat Isbulayev. I think Pinedo should definitely win that. And then I think opening up the main card is Puya Rahmani versus Carl Williams, which is a pretty good heavyweight fight. And Rahmani's undefeated. So I remember he had a really good win on their last Dubai show. So, maybe he can do something else here. I don't know. The rest of the card, you got a lot of solid names. Taylor Lapilus is on there. Luke Trainer, Rob Wilkinson's a good fight. Another Habib Nabiev. I believe he trains with the Dagestanis and stuff. So I think this is going to be a fun card. I think it's one of PFL's best cards maybe ever. And I'm so optimistic about their launch in 2026. So hopefully it's good. Now let's talk about UFC. This is an Apex card, but it is one of the better Apex cards I think we've seen. Main event, Mario Bautista versus Vinicius Oliveira. Bautista obviously higher ranked coming off the loss to Usman Nurmagomedov. Before that, very good run. Vinicius Oliveira, coming through the ranks, some really solid wins last year. I believe he is a favorite, right? Oh, he's a slight underdog. Interesting. I'm going to pick Oliveira to win this fight. I think most people are. I think that this is, kind of his opportunity to become more of a star, and I think that's kind of why they put him into this position, putting him with a real contender. Like, he beats Bautista, he's in that upper echelon of the division. Not like he's going to get a title shot or anything, but, after Bautista, it'll only take like 2 top wins, and then he'll be in that discussion. So I think it's going to be a very competitive fight, but I'm picking Vinicius, and who knows? I've doubted Mario Bautista a lot before and been wrong. Co-main event, Amir Albazi versus Kyoji Horiguchi. At first, I kind of felt that they're kind of rushing Kyoji Horiguchi to try and get him a title shot because he's no spring chicken. But he's got a lot of momentum right now. People are really vibing with him. They want him to get that title shot. They want him to fight Tatsuro Taira in Japan. And I do love the guy. And I think that he does beat Amir Albazi. Albazi has not been in the best of form as of late. I mean, if you look at it, his last fight was a win, but it was in grappling, actually. Hold up. No, his last UFC fight was a loss to Brandon Moreno, and that was over a year ago. He hasn't fought since 2024. And he's actually only fought once a year for the past few years. One fight in 2024, one fight in 2023, 2 in 2022, 1 in 2021, none in 2020 at all. Or actually, no, 1 in 2020. And then no fights in 2025. So not very active. Horiguchi's been relatively active. I think Horiguchi does win this fight, and if he does, he is definitely at the top of the flyweight division. And then we can start talking about title contention. I didn't like people talking about it after his last fight, but after this, I'm down for it. Jailton Almeida is back fighting Rizvan Kuniev. I hope Almeida can win people over. I mean, his last fight was really boring, and then all of a sudden, everyone starts talking about him like he's this only guy who only gets decisions. He's had 26 fights, only been the distance 3 times. That's crazy, that he gets so much flack. Apparently, 16 of his 22 wins come by finishing the first round. So this guy does know how to finish people. It's more so, is he going to take risks? And he didn't really take risks against Volkov, and he got robbed in that fight. But it was, you can't really be mad at it. Against Kuniev, this has to be his fight to win. Kuniev isn't even ranked, I don't think. So I would have to think Almeida is able to hopefully finish him. And get some of that public favor back. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk versus Marc-Andre Barriault. A fun fight. I got Oleksiejczuk. I think he's just, had a better 2025. Some good finishes last year. I think he wins that. I think Farid Basharat takes out Gene Matsumoto. Only one loss for Matsumoto, and that comes to Rob Font, I believe. Basharat undefeated on a slow but steady rise to the UFC. Dustin Jacoby, Julius Walker opening up the main card. That one, Justin Jacoby's a slight favorite. Yeah, I can see that. We'll see. That's a good fight. So I'm really excited. And then the prelims are pretty solid as well. But yeah, it's going to be a very, very fun Apex card. I really think this one's going to deliver. But let's talk about some boxing before we talk about KnuckleMania. Nick Ball, everyone's favorite wrecking ball. This guy's, I believe, like 5'2", and he's fighting Figueroa. I think it's like 5'9". I saw that there was a 7-inch height differential between these two, which is nuts. And look, Figueroa was a good fighter. I mean, a year ago, he was holding a featherweight title himself before he went in and lost to Stephen Fulton again. His only 2 losses in his career come to Stephen Fulton. And, I mean, like, you know, that's not the worst person to lose to, but Stephen Fulton completely dominated him, and then Fulton went on to get completely dominated by Oshaki Foster. So, you know, Fulton's not as good as he once was. I don't think Figueroa is as good as he once was. When was the last time he actually had an impressive win? Probably... I don't know. I mean, looking at his run, he stopped Carlos Castro. That was good. Unanimous decision win over Mark Mixayo. Okay. Stopped Jesse Magdalena. I remember that wasn't a great performance until then. The loss to Stephen Fulton. Joet Gonzalez, he was very lucky to get a decision in. I don't think that he won that fight. And now here he's with Nick Ball, who this is Nick Ball's toughest fight in a while, or at least it could be. I mean, the Sam Goodman fight was very close. And TJ Doheny he stopped him, but it was a little bit weird going on. Completely dominated Ronnie Rios. And then the win over Ray Ford, I did think he beat him. That was a very competitive fight. I think Nick Ball beats him, and I think but I think it's going to be a competitive fight. I see it being like an 8-4 kind of fight. You know, I think Figueroa will have some success at certain times. You know, and Nick Ball's going to have to be on his A game, and particularly he's going to have to be in his raised shoes to be able to reach him. But I think he should be able to get it done by decision probably. But it's going to be an interesting fight to watch stylistically just because of the huge height difference. I just hope the winner unifies. Also on that card, Andrew Kane takes on Jair Gonzalez in a WBC bantamweight title eliminator. I don't know if this is the final eliminator or the rumored fight between Tenshin Nasukawa and Juan Francisco Estrada. That one, I think, has been ordered, but they're going to be, hasn't actually been announced yet. I don't know which one of these guys, the winner of which fight is going to be in better standing. So, this is on paper should be Kane's toughest fight, but I think that he should win it. I mean, Gonzalez has 6 losses on his record. Hasn't lost in a while, but Andrew Kane, only the 1 loss as a professional. I've been really impressed with his last few performances. So we'll see. I thought that he was able to still get a win against Charlie Edwards in that terrible fight. But yeah, looking forward to that. Jack Turner back in the undercard. He had a very sketchy performance last time, but that power, he can just knock anyone out at any time. So we'll see. Brad Strand also back in another 10-rounder. He kind of needs a good win because his last few wins at a higher level has not been great. Other than that, just a lot of prospects. Stephen Clark on the card. Hassan Ishaq on the card. I feel like he'll be on the main card. And then moving on from there, let's talk about BKFC. KnuckleMania 6. Main event, Ben Rothwell-Andrei Arlovski. This card is going to be so good. It's going to be so much fun. I saw that they're streaming it live and free like everywhere on YouTube. Like on Tubi. You don't need a subscription to watch this, and I like that. Trying to get it as much viewership as possible so as many people can see it. I think this is going to be a fun fight. I'm definitely picking Ben Rothwell, but this is bare knuckle, and this is especially heavyweight. Anything can happen. I think the heavyweight title keeps on changing hands like a hot potato, but I've got Ben Rothwell beating Andrei Arlovski. I just hope the winner has another fight this year because it feels like this title gets fought for at KnuckleMania, and that's it for the rest of the year. Co-main event, Lorenzo Hunt taking on Dave Mundell. I'm disappointed we don't get to see him fight Yoel Romero because that would have been insane to watch. But, dude, Dave Mundell is like considered the pound-for-pound guy in bare knuckle. And look, he's coming up in weight. To cruiserweight, it says this fight's at. That is Lorenzo Hunt's division more so. And Lorenzo Hunt was dropped multiple times in his last fight against Dyer before, getting up and stopping him himself in that first round, which was insane. But the guy can get hit, and Dave Mundell is good. I kind of see an upset here. I'm going to pick Dave Mundell because Lorenzo Hunt has not been impressive. He hasn't been active as of late. So I'm going to pick Dave Mundell, who's also not been terribly active. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. I'm just going to go, for the underdog, surprise me. But I'm really glad they can make that fight happen. Johnny Garbarino is back. Cannoli himself taking on Kane Tomlinson Jr. A more of a name for Garbarino, I guess. He's getting featured fight, which is a big shout for him. So I think that he does win this one. He's a minus 1,000 favorite, which is crazy. I think it could be closer than that, but yeah, I've got Garbarino winning. Ben Bonner, Tony Soto. This fight's now a lightweight title eliminator because Franco Tenaglia signed with PFL all of a sudden out of nowhere. He's going to be making his debut at PFL Madrid. Of course, he was in the tournament where he beat Ben Bonner, and then he was going to have to fight Austin Trout, I believe it was, for that vacant title. Now the winner of this is going to go on and fight Trout for the vacant title. This rematch of their great fight last summer. Yes, it should be good. I mean, I want to side with Ben Bonner because he did win the first fight, and I thought that he was very close to beating Tenaglia, but just came up short. But it was a really close fight the first time around too. So we'll see. But I am picking Bonner in the rematch as well. Patrick Brady, Bear Hill. That one should be good. Shouldn't go long. Jade Masan Wong versus Crystal Pittman. Another solid fight between some vets at BKFC. Mike Richmond, Joe Elmore, Pat Sullivan is fighting against a guy named Felony, Charles Bennett. I mean, the card is just pretty deep for a BKFC card. You usually don't see this many of the same names on the card. These guys are usually all in the top 3 fights of the event. So I think this is one of their best cards. Every year they kind of step up KnuckleMania, and I'm excited. You don't often get big fight fields with BKFC, but you will for this one. And then lastly for this weekend, tonight actually, Christian Medina, Adrian Curiel. Very fun fight. That match was put together in Mexico. Look, I don't think that Curiel has necessarily earned this title shot. I think that he could be fun in there. I think Medina came off a fantastic win over Takei last time out, winning the title, and I was really impressed by it. I hope that he can put in another impressive performance here, and if he does, we've got a lot of real problems at bantamweight. It is a very, very good division, one of the best of the lower weight classes, I think, and it's just wide open, waiting for somebody to take over, and that man could be Christian Medina. So we'll have to see. I think it should be a banger, but I think he comes out on top. Rest of the undercard, not a whole lot else. The undefeated Alberto Mora is in the co-main event against Jose Amaro. I remember Amaro had a good fight on the undercard of Rafael Espinoza versus Kagai in November, where I think that was his first loss, yeah. And then also Abraham Cordero versus Eduardo Martinez is the other 10-rounder. Sebastian Juarez, who had a round of the year candidate last year's fighting. Should be a good show. Now, there was one other fight that happened last night, and we'll talk about it here for a little bit. That was the Eye of the Tiger card, headlined by Mehmet Unal versus Alton Zogai, as we thought it was going to be Albert Ramirez defending that WBA interim light heavyweight title versus Lerone Richards. Bit of a mismatch, but anyways, 2 days before Ramirez falls ill or gets injured or something, he can't fight, which was a huge blow because that was the main fight I was actually looking forward to. But they were able to salvage it with a good show. Mainly, really good performances from both Mehmet Unal and Dimitri Asanau. Asanau is getting close to a title shot. I think he's number 5 with the WBC, and that title just went vacant. We'll talk about that in a second. So he's close to one. I thought that he looked solid. And then you also have Unal, who was finally pushed to go much longer into the fight against an undefeated guy, but largely one-sided. And then he has a great knockout in the 9th round to close it out. I thought that I was worried about the fatigue, but he never stopped throwing and made it 9 of the 10 rounds before getting a knockout. So good win for him. Thomas Shabbat came back from his first loss against a fellow Canadian and Dominic Babanao, who definitely lost the fight. That was a split decision, which I thought was insane. Somebody gave Babanao the fight in 96-94. I think you give him at max 3, maybe 4 rounds if you want to be generous. I gave him 2, I think, because he did have a lot of moments where he would actually have the biggest punches of the fight. But outside of that, it wasn't much. Just these isolated moments of success. And then Wyatt Sanford as well had yet another decision win. He's a good prospect, but just doesn't look like the power is really there. And he was looking for it this time. Anyways, we've been alluding to it all episode. Shakur Stevenson has been stripped of the WBC lightweight championship, and this is mainly not because what you would think he moved up weight, he's not going to be at 135 anymore. That's not it, because he was probably planning on returning and defending that title. It's because he didn't pay his sanctioning fees. The sanctioning fees that the WBC were making him fight in a non-WBC title fight. They wanted him to pay $100,000 when they had nothing to do with the fight whatsoever. And I don't know if they wanted him to pay for it as a way of we're allowing you to not go ahead and fight without your title and move up, and we're not, just stripping you of it. Maybe that's their logic, and they're like, we're doing you a favor here. You at least got to pay us something. But I don't know if he was even that. Look, the WBC with these sanctioning fees are really making it easy for Zuffa Boxing to collect fighters because they're seeing these big names like Shakur and Crawford get stripped of their titles for not paying sanctioning fees that are very large and seem kind of ridiculous. And these younger fighters are like, dude, I don't want to do that. And Zuffa's like, hey, we don't have sanctioning fees. We're not going to pay you anywhere near as much money as if you were to fight for the WBC title, but we're not going to make you pay for sanctioning fees. So they're like, all right, well, shit, I'll just go over there. So I think this is really poor from the WBC to be doing this. It's a bad time, and I don't think that they should be making. Shakur pay sanctioning fees to the WBC in a WBO title fight. It just doesn't make sense. But look, he's now been stripped of that title. I don't know if he's going to want to go and fight for the WBC. Shakur, somebody who kind of stands on stuff, and I don't know if he's just going to be like, oh, whatever, I'll just go fight anyways. It doesn't really matter. He seems kind of pissed about it. Jadir Herrera has not been upgraded to full champion. It seems like the belt is being held vacant, and they may have somebody else fight for it. The main two everyone are talking about are Lamont Roach and William Zepeda. I think they may be ranked highest. That's a fun fight. I like that one. Roach also called out Shakur, and Shakur said he'd love to fight him. Maybe that happens, and then Zepeda fights Herrera for the full title. I do feel like as interim champion, he should be elevated, but if he does, it's like, dude, he did literally nothing to get to this title. It'd be kind of insane, but we'll have to see in the coming months who is going to end up fighting for the WBA strap. Is that and the WBA title are also now vacated. That one likely to be fought for by Floyd Schofield and maybe Lucas Body if Lamont Roach will fight for the WBC. I am kind of curious if Shakur does now still go back down to 135. He seemed like he wanted to, but that's also because he had a title. If he goes back down now, he's going to have to fight another champion for one, where all of the bigger money fights are at 140 and above. He has the title at 140. He may choose to just stay there. If he does come back down to 135, it doesn't matter if the WBC is involved or not, because the fight we all want to see is Raymond Murataya. I think he's now the second best champion. You don't have a lot of champions in that division right now. You do still have Abdullah Mason, I guess, but I don't think he'll fight Shakur. I think they're kind of friends. But I think that is the fight to make at 135. All right, Ilia Topuria has said he's returning. Yeah, so apparently he and his ex-wife have reached an agreement, and so they're settling, which I think is great. I think it's really unfortunate when families break up and then they start going into making it legal, and it's just really hard and unnecessary. So I think this is definitely the best outcome for everyone involved, that they are not continuing with the legal case and such. So I think this is a good call. But as for him, he says he's back in training now, and he wants to return to the White House. So I'm like, all right, bet. Like, that is a pretty good timeline. A year out of the cage. Don't love it, but overall, from when he announced this break, and I think like November, now early February, it's not overly long of a time. We were worried he wouldn't fight at all this year, so resolved it relatively early on, and now ready to get back in there, and looks like it will be Justin Gaethje at that White House, and Justin Gaethje deserves to fight at the White House, so I have no problem if that's one of the many title fights we see on that night. Floyd Mayweather apparently is suing Showtime for $340 million, claiming that they, skimped him out of all these costs and did fraud, and that they should have paid him more for pay-per-view. I mean, look, Floyd, he hasn't fought on Showtime pay-per-view in years. The last time he officially fought on Showtime was Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather. Before that, Conor McGregor. And before that, I think it was like 2015. So it's just crazy that it's like, why are you waiting until now? If you had these issues. And I'll tell you why. It's because he's broke. We know that Floyd likes to spend, and he looks like even though he's made so much money, probably north of $1 billion at this point in his career, he continues to just keep on spending, and it's kind of rubbed him, it's screwed him up. And look, I don't think that Showtime hid any money from Mayweather. I don't understand how you can want more money if you're Mayweather. But I don't think it's a want. I think it's a need at this point because, we know how he likes to live his life. There's also rumors. I saw an announcement. I have no idea if it's real, that he's going to fight somebody in Greece this summer, which I'm like, what? I don't think that that's real. We'll see if it is, if it actually gets announced. But Floyd also announces exhibitions all the time that never happen. So we will have to see if that one's real at all. I like to think that it's not. And we'll have to see if this lawsuit continues or if it just gets struck down as frivolous. Who knows? Shavkat Rakhmonov, look, we talked about it last time. He's injured yet again, and he's now been removed from the rankings at 170 pounds. We can't really be surprised. We can't really be upset. I mean, look, if we find out, look, you haven't fought in over a year, you're not going to return to the cage for likely another year. We can't have you ranked anymore. And this also just makes it less confusing as to what happens with that title. He was one of the main guys that, was being discussed for fighting Islam Makhachev. We know that's not going to be him now. I think it should be Ian Gary. I wouldn't be mad if it's Michael Morales, but I'd prefer Ian Gary. I would be mad if it's going to be Kamaru Usman, and unfortunately, that feels like it's the most likely option at the moment because UFC wants to make that legacy fight, the two big names. I get it, but also it's like, come on, we can't be doing that. We cannot be doing that. That's just not the right fight to make at all. MVP. Look, it was rumored for a long time, and they officially announced it. Their debut in the UK will come on April 5th, Sunday, and it is a 4-fight women's all-world title fight card, and it's going to be on Sky Sports. We know that they've been negotiating a deal. I don't think that this is a long-term deal yet. I think it's just a one-off show at the moment. But look, this fact that Sky Sports wants to stay in boxing is good, but the fact that they're choosing to take an American promoter as their lead boxer is crazy. We also know Zuffa Boxing has been in discussions with them, as that wouldn't be their main one. Those events are all going to be in the U.S. pretty much. They're just wanting them to be in the U.K. or they need a place to be in the U.K. because I think right now they're just on like YouTube. But look, this is huge for MVP. Just another thing where it's like, wow, they're really moving big. That card though, main event: Caroline Dubois, Terry Harper for the unified lightweight titles. Fantastic fight. You got to go with Dubois on that one, but Terry Harper always finds a way to make it competitive, you think. Co-main event, undisputed. Ellie Scotty's going to go for it against Mayeli Flores. Great double main event. And then you've also got Chantel Cameron going up 2 divisions to fight for the WBO Super Welterweight Championship versus Mikhaila Kotaskova. I have no idea why she's going up 2 divisions. She was just at 140. If she went up at 147, that would make sense, but I just don't get why she's going up to 154. Also, was this title not already held by Michaela Mayer? I'm so confused. Anyways, Emma Dolan will challenge Irma Garcia for her IBF Super Flyweight Championship. So I don't know if Emma Dolan's been signed by them. I think she has, but if not, she is now. A lot of UK talent, and that's just the main card. I'm sure you'll get some prelims as well. I'm curious where it's going to be broadcast in the U.S., if it's still going to be on DAZN or Triller. I don't know. But, really cool to see MVP go to the UK and do it with Sky Sports, do it big time, and what a card they have set up. Weird it's on a Sunday. Same weekend as Chisora Wilder. That's going to be a crazy weekend of boxing because you also have Lauren Price fighting that weekend, and it was just reported that Pat Brown is apparently set to headline in Altrincham on April 3rd, that Friday. So we're going to have a lot of UK boxing. Rumor could be John Hedges. We know that he's been offered that fight. I think that makes the most sense. An English title fight, headlining. You're going to want to get Pat Brown to get all those traditional titles. That's probably what it should be. Speaking of, a new broadcaster ex-promoter, Matchroom apparently is close to closing a deal with Fox Sports Australia, in which they would do 8 shows a year, 4 of which are pay-per-view. Now, Eddie did say that they're working on a new deal in Australia. This is a little bit worrying to me because I'm like, aren't you guys supposed to be with DAZN worldwide? Why are you, now also going to have a separate one for Fox Sports? Maybe it's just because DAZN's like, look, we don't really want to invest too much in Australia. It hasn't worked out for us. They didn't do the last Jaya Pataya fight, probably for that reason. So they're going to go to Fox Sports, who is a big broadcaster over there. They're who does all the no-limit cards. Then this way, Matchroom can finally, become a legitimate Australian promoter like they keep on talking about, where they want to do we're going to do 5 shows this year, and then they do like 2. Maybe they can actually step it up. And they don't have a huge Australian stable right now, but, with the money from this Fox Sports deal, if they get it over the line, they can definitely get a lot more guys under them. I would love to see more boxing from Australia as long as it's on DAZN, because my biggest issue with No Limit is that they're the only promotion that you cannot watch at all in the United States. Just because they're on Fox Sports and Main Event and all this other stuff, but not on anything in the U.S., and which is really, really frustrating. There's no way to watch it. So who knows? Hopefully, I'm good with the deal as long as it's also on DAZN rest of the world. Bakram Murtazaliev has asked the IBF for a rematch, for the one to be ordered based on that Steve Gray 10-10 score on round 12. And look, if you don't know, Steve Gray, who's, does this a lot, he scored the final round of the fight 10-10. And if he'd given it to Bakram, it would have been a draw, and Bakram would have retained his title. So because he chose to, stupidly not actually score the fight, as was his job, the complete decision of the fight would have been different. I think he scored a 10-10, making it a draw, didn't he? Or no, he scored it for Josh Kelly. Yeah, but if he changes that, that becomes a draw for Bakram. You know, like that's crazy, and a lot of people think that Bakram won the final round. So, and if it's a draw, Bakram holds on to the title. So I don't really want to see a rematch, but if I'm Bakram versus Ali, I would be pissed seeing that, and I would also be like, give me a rematch or at least investigate that shit because you can't be doing that. I hate that in British boxing, the judges always score 10-10 rounds. I never do personally. I hate it. It's just choosing to be like, oh, that was kind of a hard round to score. Just not going to do my job. You know, I'm just going to sit on the fence on that one. Like, no, you can't do that. You have to choose a winner. You know, especially when it's a world title fight and that's the last round and decides the complete decision of the fight. Doing your job, it's ridiculous. So I hope you get some kind of, compensation or something for it. I don't know. No Limit have won the Crocker-Parra purse bid. I'm not going to pretend to be surprised. We all knew this was going to happen. Matchroom does not win purse bids. So a fight is going to be in Australia. There was a rumor that it could have landed on the Fedora-Thurman pay-per-view, but then it was later confirmed for Australia, although PBC is still on the poster. I don't really get that one. So now people are saying, what if Tim Tszyu is fighting on the card in the main event? And the rumor is that he could be fighting Errol Spence. That's a fight being discussed. I don't think that happens at all. But Tim Tszyu is also still a PBC fighter, I think. And if it is, then maybe it'll be, broadcast here on Prime Video on PBC, similar to how one of the last Tim Tszyu fights was when he fought in Australia. Excuse me, in April of last year. And I would like that. Asu Almabayev is out of his fight versus Brandon Moreno on February 28th, and Loner Kavanaugh is who has been brought in. Like, this guy's like number 15. He's coming off like a knockout loss, I think. It makes absolutely no sense to me why they're bringing this, young prospect in to fight Brandon Moreno when you've got all these other options. The fight is still over 3 weeks away. Brandon Royval offered to step in. That fight makes way more sense. A trilogy? Like, what are we doing here? Why is Loner Kavanaugh the one who chose? I saw they came out like immediately after Almabayev was out. They brought in Kavanaugh, and I was like, why the hell would you bring in Kavanaugh? I hope that's not true. And then it is. So, I mean, hey, shout out to Kavanaugh for getting that opportunity, but it should not have been him. We did have some press conferences. Fedora-Thurman, that one, I mean, I thought it was funny because Fedora is a very nice guy, barely said a word. He goes up for his speech. It's like two seconds, and then Thurman was up there for like 5+ minutes, but Thurman is a great talker. He's a great salesman. I mean, I think he could honestly be a bit of a promoter. The way he was selling the fight, it was good. The other press conference I had was Wilder versus Chisora. That one was very funny. And it was just so weird. I mean, like, MF Pro is launching big time, dude. They announced an exclusive deal with DAZN, a long-term deal, where I thought they were just part of the Misfits deal that already existed, but looks like they're really a private, a separate entity. And then they announced today that on Friday, March 20th, they've got Mick Conlon returning at the SSE Arena in Belfast versus Kevin Walsh. Now, that in itself, not a great fight or anything, but look, it's big that they're getting 2 arena shows back to back. They're not coming in quietly, like I think a lot of people thought they were going to. They're doing Derek Chisora, Deontay Wilder. That's a huge fight. That's a pay-per-view. And I know that fight is also, kind of with Frank Warren, but it's really an MF Pro show. And Misfits gets a lot of flack, but this is a very different company, it seems. It kind of seems like just kind of Wasserman has folded into MF Pro as they've got Mick Conlon headlining here. There's not been any update on any Channel 5 shows. I think that deal may be over. Tom Welland said he's going to fight on the April card. So that kind of seems like where we're headed. And I don't hate that. I really don't hate that. So, I'm excited for their launch. And Wilder vs. Chisora is going to be a lot of fun. I thought their press conference was great. They had a lot of respect, but still got to see some Bomb Squad. Wilder sounded off on Simon Jordan. That was crazy, for wanting to bring up the Fury fights, which is clearly he's still upset about the losses. But yeah, that was definitely interesting. I don't like Simon Jordan, but I didn't think he was overstepping it at all. I think Wilder's just kind of sensitive to that topic, it seems. And then some other fights that we had announced. Reese Edwards going to be fighting Gully Power for the British Featherweight Championship on that April 4th Boxer card. That's a pretty good matchup, I think. I'm glad Reese Edwards is still getting fights after he stepped in to face Peter McGrail and looked really good against him on just a couple days' notice. Vito Milnicki is going to be fighting Manuel Gallego. I crossed up my notes here. Vito Milnicki is going to be fighting Omar Ulises Huerta on April 11th in Atlantic City, apparently on ProBox TV. ProBox hasn't announced it yet, but I saw a poster. I believe Milnicki announced it as well. I don't love that fight. I have no idea who Huerta is. I feel like Milnicki's really getting good and really getting high ranked at middleweight. I feel like I prefer to see him in better fights, but who knows? Maybe Huerta is solid. I don't know. I just want to see him tested. And then ProBox TV also announced that Najee Lopez, Manuel Gallegos, is going to be March 13th in Florida. So yeah, another kind of step up for Najee Lopez. Manuel Gallegos, of course, stopped Kulikov before getting stopped by him in the rematch. I like that fight. And then Dominic Valle will be co-main event against Eduardo Ramirez. So hopefully another solid ProBox show. I like they're doing Friday nights and not Saturdays or Thursdays or Wednesdays. I think Friday's a good slot for them. Oh yeah, that's all I've got for today's episode. Hope everyone enjoys the fights this weekend. A lot of good ones across boxing, MMA, and bare knuckle. We'll see what happens with the Shakur situation. It's crazy. I don't know what division he's going to fight at. I don't know who's going to fight for the WBC title, but all will be revealed soon enough. But thank y'all so much for listening, and peace out.